Hello again, sleepy friend. Welcome back to Boring Science for Sleep. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin, just take a moment. What time is it where you are? Late, maybe? Or just past that quiet part of the evening when the world starts to hush? Wherever you are, and however your day has been, you've made it to this moment. That's enough. Let this be your time to slow down, breathe softer, and let your thoughts wander gently into the clouds. Now, I invite you to settle in, maybe fluff your pillow, pull the covers closer, or find that comfortable spot you always go to when the world feels just a little too awake. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome. I hope you'll make this a gentle bedtime ritual. Tonight, we'll drift with the birds. You've seen them, haven't you? Dark shapes gliding across a pale sky, flocks wheeling in slow arcs as if they share one mind. Maybe you've wondered, just like I have, how do they know where to go? No maps, no signs, just sky. Every year, across forests, oceans, cities and sand, they fly. From icy northern shores to tropical warmth, they follow ancient paths with unshakable certainty. They do not ask questions. They do not hesitate. They simply go. But how? Is it instinct, memory, magnetism, a secret passed down from feather to feather? Tonight, as the world grows quiet around you, we'll follow that mystery, slowly, sleepily, with no rush to arrive. Let your thoughts be like wings, soft, quiet, and free to roam. So breathe in and let go. The journey begins. You wouldn't know it, watching a baby bird hatch. The fragile shell cracking like old porcelain, the creature inside wet and blinking and new. It trembles, eyes barely open, feathers slick and sticking together in little tufts. It knows nothing of the world. Not yet. And still, somewhere inside its tiny chest, a map is already unfolding. Not a map drawn with ink and roads, not something anyone can hold, but it's there, etched in molecules, in instinct, in a soft biological hum passed down through time. A memory older than the bird itself, older than its mother or its mother's mother. This baby bird has never flown before, but one day it will take to the sky and head exactly where it needs to go. How? The word we use is instinct, but that word is only the surface of a much deeper mystery. You see, some birds are born pre-programmed to leave, like wind-up toys placed gently on the edge of the world. They wait for a signal, a shortening of daylight, a dip in temperature, a shift in the air, and then, without any teacher, without any previous journey, they lift off. North, south, across oceans, across deserts, across cities they've never seen. This built-in knowledge, this invisible compass, is partly written in the language of genes. Migration routes are passed down, like lullabies hummed in the dark, generation after generation. Not every detail, but the big strokes. Fly this way, at this time, until the warmth returns. Some species don't even follow their parents. They go alone, and yet they find their way. Think of the black-cap warbler, a songbird no larger than a ping-pong ball. When researchers raised young birds in a lab, with no exposure to the wild, they noticed something odd. As autumn approached, the birds grew restless. They fluttered in their cages, always facing a particular direction, southwest, as if a part of their body was tugged by a string only they could feel. They called this phenomenon Zugunruhe, a German word that means migratory restlessness. It's as if the map inside them began to hum louder as the time came near, like an alarm you can't ignore, set not by clock but by sunlight. And the astonishing thing? These birds weren't guessing. They were pointing exactly toward the traditional wintering grounds their species had used for centuries, without having ever seen it. Now imagine this, a young bird in the wild, not in a lab. It's never flown more than a few branches away. And yet, come September, it lifts into the air and begins a journey of thousands of kilometers, across mountains, across oceans, through storm and silence, guided by nothing it can see, but everything it feels. This is the genetic compass. It's not perfect. Birds can and do get lost, especially as climates shift and human lights confuse the sky. But the fact that most do not get lost, that they return year after year to the same tiny grove, the same pond, the same patch of reeds, is one of nature's quiet miracles. Of course, not all birds rely solely on genes. In many species, parents lead the way, flying in formation, teaching their young by example. But even in those cases, the urge to migrate, the very sense that something must begin, still stirs within the chick's body before any lesson is given. The map is planted first. The flight comes later. Inside every migrating bird is a balance of nature and nurture, just like in us. They are born with the compass, but sometimes they refine it through experience. And yet some birds never learn from others because they don't need to. Take the bar-tailed godwit, a long-legged shorebird with a spotted back and a long, curved bill. One of these birds was tracked flying more than 12,000 kilometers non-stop from Alaska to New Zealand. No rest, no refuel. Just wing beat after wing beat for over 8 days, guided by the pull of biology and the wind. How did it know? It had never made the trip before, and still, it arrived. That's the part we often forget. Migration isn't about one-time success. It's about repeating a pattern year after year, across generations, without error. For that, you need more than luck. You need memory encoded in blood. You need a map that doesn't fade. And so, lying here tonight, you can marvel at this quiet truth. Some creatures are born already, knowing the way home. Imagine if you, too, had that. Not a GPS, not a compass in your hand, but something soft inside your chest that hummed when you were near what felt right. Imagine if, instead of wondering where to go, you simply knew because your cells remembered places your body had never seen. For birds, that's not imagination. It's biology. And it's only the beginning. Later, we'll explore the tools birds use to sharpen that internal map. The stars, the sun, the magnetic fields beneath their feet. But tonight, this is where we begin, with the birds who hatch into this world already holding a whisper of the journey ahead. No lessons, no doubt. Just the wind at their back and a map beneath their wings. Picture yourself lying in a wide, open field. The sky stretches above you in soft blues and fading golds. You close your eyes for just a moment, and when you open them again, night has fallen. The stars have come out quietly, like thoughts that waited until the world grew still, and high above, something stirs, wings, slicing through the dark, moving with purpose. A bird is crossing the night. But how does it know where it's going? In the last segment, we whispered about the map inside their bodies, genetic memory, instinct, direction encoded in feathers and bone, but maps alone don't move you forward. For that, you need a way to navigate, to know where you are and where you're going. Birds, astonishingly, use the sky itself. Let's begin with the Sunday. During the day, the sun isn't just a source of warmth, it's a guide. Birds can tell direction based on the sun's position in the sky. They know, for example, that if the sun is to their left in the morning, they must be flying south. But here's the remarkable part. Birds also seem to correct for time of day. They don't just see the sun, they calculate with it. This ability is called a sun compass, but it only works if you also have an internal clock. Birds possess something called a circadian rhythm, like you and I, but even more precise. This rhythm allows them to mentally adjust for the sun's movement across the sky. It's as if, with every wing beat, they're updating their celestial GPS. It's 10 a.m., and the sun is here, so I must be headed southeast. It's not guessing, it's geometry. But what about at night? Many birds fly in darkness. It's cooler, calmer, and safer from predators. When the sun disappears, they don't panic. Instead, they lift their eyes to the stars. You may have done this too, looked up and wondered if those patterns meant anything. For birds, they do. They use star maps. In one famous experiment, Scientists placed migrating birds inside a planetarium, an artificial dome of stars. When the researchers rotated the stars to simulate a different direction, the birds shifted their orientation to match. Even young birds, with no experience, could identify north by locating the position of the North Star or by recognizing the rotation of constellations. Think about that for a moment. A creature the size of your hand can read the stars. But even more magical is this: birds don't see the sky like we do. While we stare in wonder, they interpret. They don't just admire the constellations, they use them as tools. But the sky isn't always clear. Clouds roll in, winds shift. Sometimes the stars are hidden. What then? This is where things grow even more mysterious. Because deep within a bird's body, possibly in its eyes, or perhaps in its brain, is a kind of compass that doesn't rely on light. It's sensitive to something we cannot see, yet it surrounds us constantly. The Earth's magnetic field. Imagine invisible lines stretching from the North Pole to the South Pole, curling and dipping like threads in a loose-knit blanket. This magnetic field is what makes compass needles point north, and birds, somehow, can feel it. Scientists believe they possess something called magnetoreception, a biological ability to sense magnetic fields. This might sound like science fiction, but the evidence is mounting. Some birds, when exposed to tiny magnetic pulses, change their migratory orientation. Others seem to see the magnetic field in the form of subtle visual patterns, perhaps as a glow or shimmer overlaid on their normal sight. One hypothesis suggests a special protein in their eyes, cryptochrome, might react to magnetic forces, offering a ghostly guide through the gloom. In other words, while flying through fog or moonless dark, birds may still see a direction, just not in the way we do. Even more strangely, the magnetic sense seems tied to location. Birds may detect variations in the strength or angle of Earth's magnetic pull, giving them not just direction, but a rough idea of where they are, like a biological version of latitude and longitude. All of this, inside a body no larger than your palm. And still, the mystery grows. Some birds use smell, others, landmarks, still others, the polarization of sunlight, how it bends and filters through the atmosphere. Navigation, for birds, is not a single skill. It is a symphony of senses, each tuned to a different part of the sky. They layer one signal over another: sun, star, magnetic field, scent, wind. They cross-check, they adapt, they remember. Let's go back, just for a moment, to that open field, the stars overhead, the quiet hum of night. Imagine you're flying, like the bird you heard earlier. There's no phone in your pocket, no map in your wing, just instinct and the sky. To you, it might feel like a miracle. To the bird, it's simply the way things are. And yet, even for birds, things sometimes go wrong. Artificial lights confuse the stars. Skyscrapers interrupt natural wind patterns. Climate change shifts the timing of seasons. Some birds fly too early, others too late. Some never make it at all. But still, they try. Every year, across thousands of miles, they lift into the sky and trust the map they've been given. They adjust. They persist. Not with calculation or spreadsheets, but with something more profound, a faith in the world's rhythm. It's humbling, isn't it? To think of birds not as simple creatures, but as master navigators, travelers who can read the sky and feel the earth, who carry a compass not in their hand but in their bones. And tonight, as you rest, you might feel a little of that too. Maybe you've been searching, wondering where to go next, trying to find your way through a sky that sometimes feels unfamiliar. If so, let the birds remind you. You don't always need to see the path to feel the direction. Sometimes it's already inside you. Sometimes the stars are just waiting for you to look up. So close your eyes. The wind is steady, the world is quiet, and far above, the birds are still flying. You are lying still now, breathing slowly. The blanket of night is tucked around you, and somewhere, Far above your ceiling, above the roofs and treetops and clouds, a bird is in motion. It has been flying for hours, maybe even days. It does not stop to wonder why. It does not question the distance. It simply goes across oceans, across time, across a sky, carved by memory far older than its own. This is the part of bird migration that feels almost sacred. Because when birds migrate, they are not just following the weather. They are following tradition, ancient, invisible, unbroken tradition. The bar-tailed godwit, for example, a bird with cinnamon feathers and a long, slender bill. It doesn't look especially mighty, and yet it holds one of the most astonishing records in the animal kingdom. Each year, this bird takes off from Alaska and flies, non-stop, to New Zealand. That's over 12,000 kilometers, without resting, feeding, or touching land, just sky. For nearly 8 days, it beats its wings across the Pacific, through wind and rain and sun, guided by something so deeply embedded that not even exhaustion can erase it. And it's not the only one. The Arctic tern, slender and graceful, flies from the top of the world to the bottom, from the Arctic to the Antarctic, and back again, a round trip of nearly 70,000 kilometers every year. In its lifetime, an Arctic tern may fly the equivalent of 3 trips to the moon and back. But here's what might be even more incredible. They fly these distances on purpose, not in spirals, not lost, but along precise routes, refined by generations of subtle trial and error, passed down not by lecture, not by memory, but by evolution and air and something unspoken. Imagine the sky as a scroll, unfurled with dotted lines, one for each species, cranes in their V formations, swallows swirling in playful spirals, raptors gliding on thermals. Each species traces its ancestral calligraphy through the air. They are not just flying, they are reenacting a story that began long before you were born, long before humans built cities or drew borders. A story of rhythm, pattern, and return. But how do birds remember? Some of it, we know, is instinct, deep and genetic. But some birds learn the route by following elders. Sandhill cranes, for instance, migrate in family groups. The young fly alongside parents and relatives, memorizing each bend in the river, each mountain shadow, each stretch of familiar wind. Over time, those young birds become the leaders, carrying not just themselves, but an entire cultural memory. They are, in a way, archivists of the sky. In Europe, white storks return to the same nest each year, sometimes rebuilding it on the exact same chimney or church roof. Generation after generation, the route remains the same. They pause in the same wetlands, rest in the same valleys, cross the Mediterranean at the same narrow strait. What they're following isn't just direction, it's legacy. But that legacy is fragile. The world is changing quickly. Forests vanish, wetlands dry up, cities bloom in places that once held reeds and calm water. Light pollution clouds the stars. Climate change shifts, insect hatches, wind patterns, the very shape of the sky. Still, the birds go, sometimes adjusting, sometimes struggling, but always going. Because for them, migration is not an option, it is life. Their very survival depends on getting it right. Arrive too early, and the food isn't ready. Arrive too late, and it's gone. They must time their journey with astonishing precision, syncing their wing beats with melting snow, blooming plants, or swirling fish. And they do, mostly, because they've been doing it for thousands, perhaps millions of years. Long before people named the continents. Long before clocks divided time into hours. Long before we began asking where or why. Birds simply moved, again and again, tracing the same sky. Even fossil records show this ancient rhythm, bones of long-gone birds found in now deserted places that once served as rest, stops on great migration routes. Some of those routes still exist. Birds fly today, where their ancestors once soared, unaware that time has passed at all. It's not just a migration. It's a pilgrimage, an unbroken journey across generations. And as you lie there, sinking deeper into sleep, perhaps you feel it too. That quiet awe, that soft wonder at the endurance of it all, at the idea that something so small, so light can carry such ancient wisdom. Maybe you've felt lost lately. Maybe the road ahead feels unclear. But migration reminds us that some paths do not have to be reinvented. Some paths are simply returned to, again and again. And the longest flights aren't always the hardest. Sometimes, the hardest thing is to trust that the direction you feel in your chest is real. Birds don't second-guess the sky. They listen. They follow. And when the air begins to cool, or the light begins to shift, or a whisper of wind carries the smell of distant rains, they lift themselves up, not with certainty, but with surrender. They go, because it is time to go. And maybe, as you breathe slowly now, with the weight of the blankets and the rhythm of your heart sinking with the hush around you, you can take comfort in this. You too are part of something ancient. Something that doesn't always need to be solved or explained. The birds don't ask the stars to promise them safety. They fly anyway. And they find their way not because they see the end, but because they trust the journey. Just like you, right now, moving softly toward rest. Not knowing exactly what dreams will come, but trusting that they will. So let yourself drift now. You are flying through the night, weightless, held by something older than fear. And in the distance, barely visible, the shape of a familiar land is waiting. It's not far now, just a little further, and then the sky will open, just like always. The air shifts, not in a rush, not suddenly, but in a quiet, subtle way, like the moment before a page turns. The wind tastes different, the sky leans cooler, shadows stretch longer across the grass, and somewhere, in the branches of a tall, weathered tree, a bird tilts its head and listens. It doesn't need a calendar. It doesn't check the forecast. It simply knows. Because long before migration becomes motion, it begins as a signal, a soft whisper from the world, telling the bird, soon, it's almost time. This is the part of migration that feels like listening to the earth itself. Birds respond not to one alarm, but to a symphony of cues, light, wind, temperature, and season, each offering a different kind of guidance. Let's start with the simplest one, light. As the days shorten or lengthen, birds take notice. Not by counting hours in the way we might, but by sensing changes in day length, also called photoperiod. In spring, the light grows bold. In autumn, it fades early, and with each slow adjustment of sunlight, birds begin to feel a change inside them. This change isn't just emotional, it's chemical. Increasing daylight triggers shifts in hormones, especially melatonin and gonadotropins. These tell the bird's body to prepare, to build up fat reserves, to molt into sleeker feathers, to feel the restless tug that we call migratory drive. It's a seasonal clock, tuned by sky. You might not notice the change from 12 hours of light to 11.5, but the birds do. Their very blood responds to the shift, as if the sun itself were turning the pages of an ancient calendar. And when that light combines with a certain temperature, with a certain crispness in the morning air, the call becomes louder. Wind is the next great signal. To us, it's just a breeze, maybe a gust tugging at the leaves or brushing against your jacket. To a bird, wind is a highway, a moving ribbon of possibility. Many birds wait until the wind is just right. A tailwind can save immense energy on a long flight, allowing the bird to ride the current like a sailboat gliding with the tide. Warblers, for example, wait for southerly winds to help push them across the Gulf of Mexico. Raptors ride thermals, columns of warm rising air that lift them higher without needing to flap. Even the great flocks of starlings and swifts time their departures to align with wind direction and barometric pressure. Some birds climb to incredible altitudes, over 5,000 meters, where the air is thin but smooth. There, wind is less chaotic, and the stars shine brighter. But wind doesn't just push. It also carries information. It brings scents, temperatures, the smell of rain or dry earth. These subtle elements can influence when a bird decides to begin, or whether it should pause and wait. And still, these cues mean little without the context of season. Birds are creatures of rhythm, and season is rhythm made visible. They know the difference between the quiet of summer and the urgency of fall, between the stillness of winter and the soft awakening of spring. But how? They remember, or rather, their bodies do. Their internal systems have evolved alongside the planet's tilt and orbit, syncing with the cycles of life and decay. Food sources emerge at predictable times: berries, bugs, nectar, and the birds time their travels to match this blooming. A bird arriving too soon might find empty branches. Too late, and the feast is already over. So they wait for the season to speak. And the season speaks through many voices: sunlight, plants, rainfall, moonlight, even the calls of other birds. It's not just one switch being flipped. It's a whole landscape shifting tone, like the key change in a familiar song. There are birds, like the cuckoo, that respond to the arrival of other species. They don't build their own nests, so they rely on the nesting cycles of others. Their migration must be precisely aligned, not just with geography, but with the lives of neighbors. In this way, birds are not just guided by solitary signs, but by the collective mood of the ecosystem. The flutter of butterflies, the swelling of buds, the first storm after a dry spell. Even the moonlight plays a role. Some nocturnal migrants prefer to fly on bright, moonlit nights, when the landscape glows silver beneath them. The moon provides orientation, possibly comfort. Its pull is quiet but real. You see, migration isn't a decision made in a single moment. It's a conversation between body and sky, between air and bone, between memory and the present. And sometimes that conversation includes false starts. Birds may lift off, only to circle back, or pause midway, or reroute. The signals are strong, but not always perfect. A warm snap in winter might fool a few early travelers. A cold spring might delay departure, but across species and continents, the overall dance continues. And what a dance it is! Imagine the precision. Millions of birds, dozens of species, each with its own timing, its own route, its own reason, and somehow they manage to avoid each other, to arrive, to rest, to feed, to continue. You could stand in a forest at night in early fall and hear nothing, and yet, above you, thousands of birds are moving. One layer above the clouds, a secret river of wings is flowing, drawn forward by signals only they can hear. And as you lie there now, breathing slowly, warm under your blanket, you might wonder, what are the signals in your own sky? What lights, or winds, or seasons are calling you forward? We so often ignore them, the subtle cues, the quiet invitations, but they're there. A feeling in your chest when you hear a certain song, the pull of a place you've never been, but somehow recognize. A tiredness that arrives not from work, but from staying too long in the wrong season. Birds don't debate these things. They feel the change, and they trust it. So maybe, as your thoughts soften now, and your breath deepens, you can begin to notice your own inner compass. Not to act on it, not yet. Just to listen. Because the wind is always changing. The light is always shifting. And somewhere, not far from here, a bird is lifting into the sky, confident, calm, and ready. No fear, no hesitation, just trust, just the open air and the feeling that it is time. Somewhere in a quiet nest, high above the ground, hidden in the crook of a tree or nestled among reeds, a chick stretches its wings for the first time. The air is still unfamiliar, the sky is impossibly wide, and yet something stirs. Not quite memory, not quite instinct, a whisper of purpose, a knowing without knowing. The chick doesn't yet fly, But one day, it will. And when it does, it will leave not only the nest, but everything it has ever seen, trusting a path it has never taken. How is this possible? The answer lies in a delicate balance between two kinds of wisdom: what is inherited and what is discovered. Let's begin with inheritance. Some birds are born with their migratory program already written into their bodies. We spoke earlier of instinct, of roots etched into genes like ancient messages. These birds don't need to be shown the way. They feel it. The black-capped warbler, the garden warbler, the willow flycatcher, each of them migrates alone, often at night, and often as juveniles flying without their parents. Despite never having seen the route before, they fly in the same direction, for the same duration, toward the same distant destination. This kind of migration is innate. Scientists have even found that birds from different populations, say, a black-cap from Germany and another from Hungary, will orient in slightly different directions, even if raised in the same lab. It's as if their internal compass comes pre-programmed with a unique destination. And yet, instinct has its limits. Maps passed through genes are like broad sketches. They give direction, timing, a sense of urgency. But the fine details, where to stop, when to rest, how to avoid danger, those are often learned. Which brings us to the other side of the sky, learning. In many species, especially large-bodied or long-lived birds, the migration route is passed from parent to child in ways both direct and subtle. Imagine the whooping crane, a tall, elegant bird with snow-white feathers and a trumpet-like call. In captivity, young cranes raised without adult guidance couldn't find their way south. So conservationists stepped in with ultralight aircraft. Dressed in white suits and flying small planes, they led the birds on their first migration. It worked. And the following year, the birds retraced the path themselves, learning through example. Many geese and ducks travel in family units. The parents lead, the juveniles follow. Along the way, the young memorize features, rivers, coastlines, mountain ranges. In doing so, they create their own mental maps, refined with each journey. This isn't just mimicking, it's a form of cultural transmission, and that culture can adapt far more quickly than DNA. When a new obstacle appears, a city skyline, a power line, a shifting climate, the next generation can learn a new route by following those who adjusted before them. In this way, birds become both students and teachers of the sky. Some species even develop local traditions. A population of storks in Spain, for instance, stopped migrating entirely after discovering that a landfill provided food year-round. Within a few generations, winter migration had vanished from that group, replaced not by genetic change, but by behavioral adaptation. Other birds show signs of trial and error. Young raptors, like ospreys or eagles, may wander in their first migrations, taking less efficient paths, resting too often, or flying too high. But with each season, they improve. By their second or third migration, their routes become more direct, more confident. Experience shapes the journey. There's even evidence that some birds teach each other. European cranes, when migrating in groups, have been observed making mid-flight decisions based on the actions of elders. If the lead bird shifts direction to avoid a storm, others follow. The youngest cranes benefit the most, learning not just the geography, but the rhythm of survival. All of this, instinct and instruction, inheritance and discovery, forms a kind of layered knowledge. A baby bird might be born with a magnetic compass, but it still needs to learn how to read the winds. It might feel the urge to fly south, but it may need a parent to show it the safest valley. It might know when to leave, but it must learn how to arrive. In this way, migration is not a solo skill. It's an intergenerational conversation, spoken in a language of feathers and flight. And yet, not all birds are so lucky. Sometimes, the parents are gone. Sometimes, the old path is broken. Sometimes, there is no one to follow. And still, many birds find the way. They rely more heavily on their inherited maps. They respond more sensitively to the signs in the sky. And some, like the bar-tailed godwit or the Pacific golden plover, are simply born with a path so deeply encoded that even isolation cannot erase it. This is perhaps one of the most moving truths of bird migration, that even alone, even untrained, even without guidance, many birds can still cross the vast sky and find home. And maybe, as you rest now, your body warm, your thoughts soft, you find comfort in that. Because perhaps you've had seasons where you felt unprepared. Perhaps you've wished someone would show you the way. But like the birds, there is wisdom in you, some born, some earned, some passed down, some gathered in quiet moments of trying. Not every journey needs a guide. Not every arrival needs a plan. Sometimes, it's enough to carry the memory of wind, the echo of those who flew before you, and the willingness to try. The sky doesn't expect perfection. It only asks that you lift your wings when the moment comes. And it will come. Maybe not tonight, but someday, when the season shifts just slightly, and the stars feel a little closer, and the wind turns gentle and sweet, you'll feel it too. A quiet pull towards something unseen. And like the birds, you'll go. Not because you know everything, but because you know enough. Not every journey goes as planned. Even for the birds, those skybound wanderers who seem to glide with perfect certainty, migration is rarely a straight line. The sky is wide, the weather is fickle, the world unpredictable. And yet, they go. Not because the journey is easy, but because it matters. Imagine a young bird, its feathers still new, its muscles still learning the rhythm of long flight. It lifts off at dusk, joining others on a cool October wind. Its body is ready, its compass points true. But several hours in, the clouds thicken, the stars vanish. The wind shifts, sharper, harder now, a headwind. Rain begins to fall, heavy and cold. The bird pushes forward, flapping harder than before. It begins to drift, not just off course, but off rhythm. The landmarks it expected never appear. The scent of familiar air is gone. It is lost. And this happens more often than we think. In a world so vast, with skies ever-changing, even the most seasoned flyer can be thrown off path. Storms blow birds hundreds of kilometers off route. Thick fog can disorient their sense of direction. Sudden changes in magnetic fields, caused by solar storms or even man-made interference, can scramble their inner compass. Some birds fly towards city lights by mistake, thinking they're stars. Others collide with buildings or power lines that weren't there last year. Some are exhausted before they find their next place to rest. These are the challenges of the sky. But birds are not helpless. They are remarkably resilient, equipped not just with a plan, but with the ability to adjust. Take, for instance, the Swainson's thrush. If this songbird is displaced, say, by strong winds that push it far off course, it can recalibrate mid-flight. Studies show that it can sense changes in the Earth's magnetic field and correct its direction. Other birds, like white-crowned sparrows, have been observed adjusting their route over hundreds of kilometers after being moved experimentally, not blindly, but thoughtfully, quietly, in the dark. This kind of flexibility is as vital as any instinct. Because while the map may come from within, the terrain is always changing. Then there are the storms. Migration doesn't wait for perfect weather. Many birds must fly across vast open waters, places where there is no place to land, no cover from wind or wave. The Atlantic Ocean, for instance, stands between countless songbirds and their wintering grounds in South America. When a storm arises mid-ocean, the birds can't turn back. They press forward, through wind and spray, wings soaked, bodies light and fragile against the roar. Some don't make it, and yet many do, by adjusting altitude, finding calmer currents, even drafting behind larger birds to conserve energy. Migration is not just about endurance, it's about resourcefulness. In fact, some birds have been seen landing on ships during storms, resting briefly before taking flight again when skies clear. A moment of grace, a second chance. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this story isn't just surviving the storm, it's finding the way back after being lost. Because here's what we know. Many birds who go off course eventually correct themselves. They may detour, they may arrive late, but somehow they still find the right forest, the right lake, the right nest. There is something quietly powerful in that. A reminder that being lost is not always the end. It can be a part of the journey. Some birds fly thousands of kilometers off track during their first migration, only to remember the better route on their next try. They learn, they refine. Their bodies carry not just instinct, but memory of what went wrong and how to do better. Even homing pigeons, famous for their ability to return home from hundreds of miles away, don't always fly straight. But they gather data as they go, angles, smells, sun patterns, and eventually they spiral closer and closer until home appears again. And when it does, they land, not as if they've been lost, but as if they've been circling the answer all along. Humans get lost too. In thought, in purpose, in place. We drift, we reroute, we face storms we didn't prepare for. But the birds remind us, getting lost is not failure. Sometimes, it's the storm that teaches us the shape of our wings. Sometimes, it's the detour that helps us see a new way forward. And sometimes, simply continuing, through the wind, through the dark, through the long, silent miles, is enough. Because movement itself becomes a kind of compass. A promise that even if the destination is uncertain, you are still alive, still trying, still learning the language of the sky. There's a phenomenon known as a fallout, a moment when migrating birds, overwhelmed by storms or exhaustion, drop from the sky en masse to seek shelter. You might wake one morning to find your backyard full of warblers, tanagers, or thrushes, all catching their breath. It looks like collapse, but it's recovery. A pause, a rest, a breath before rising again. And maybe you've had fallouts of your own. Moments when you needed to land, to sleep longer, to cry, to wait. Not because you were broken, but because the sky had been unkind. Birds teach us this too. Rest is not weakness. It is part of the flight. And those who rest well can rise again. So tonight, as you lie beneath the safety of blankets and stillness, know this. There is no shame in drifting. There is no shame in rerouting. There is no shame in slowing down to feel the wind on your feathers. The birds have been doing this for millennia, trusting what they know, learning what they don't, and always, always moving towards something better. You are no different. The way back is not gone. It is simply waiting for you to notice the next signal. A shift in light, a quiet calm, a moment of stillness before the wings begin again. For all we know, for all the satellites and tracking bands and decades of careful observation, bird migration remains, in many ways, a mystery cloaked in feathers, a quiet miracle in motion. We've mapped the major flyways. We've studied the shapes of wings and the angles of sunlight. We've named proteins in the eyes and tiny magnetic crystals in the skull. And still, we don't know everything. In fact, some of the most astonishing parts of migration are the ones we can't yet explain. Let's begin there, with a question. How does a juvenile bar-tailed godwit, hatched in Alaska, fly 12,000 kilometers non-stop to New Zealand on its very first journey without having seen the route or followed a parent? We can say instinct, energy stores, weather, magnetoreception, but still the complete orchestration of this act, the how of it, is a symphony that eludes our full understanding. Even with GPS trackers and radar, we can't account for all the variables that a bird must process in real time. Wind speed, cloud shape, light angle, magnetic fluctuation, hunger, exhaustion, predation. And somehow, they make it. Consider this. Birds navigate using magnetic fields, yes. But how do they sense those fields? Some theories suggest cryptochromes, special light-sensitive proteins in the eyes, allow birds to see magnetic fields as subtle visual patterns or a shifting haze across their vision. But others believe in microscopic magnetite crystals, tiny compass-like structures located in a bird's upper beak or brain. Then again, some researchers argue for both, or for something else entirely, perhaps a multisensory fusion where the magnetic field is not seen or felt, but somehow experienced in a way we don't yet have language for. It's possible that a bird's magnetic sense is as different from our experience as color is to someone who has never seen light. A sixth sense, but not magic. Just biology that we don't fully grasp. And then there are the birds that change their routes spontaneously. Sometimes, entire populations shift their migratory patterns within just a few decades. The Eurasian blackcap, for instance, once traveled only from Central Europe to the Mediterranean. But in recent years, a new population has started overwintering in Britain, drawn, perhaps, by warmer winters and well-stocked bird feeders. How did they decide? Was it trial and error? A genetic mutation? A behavioral nudge passed down by observation? We're not sure. Even more curiously, the birds that winter in Britain now migrate slightly earlier, with shorter wings, and even sing differently than their Mediterranean-bound cousins. In a few generations, the route didn't just change, the birds themselves evolved. So what governs these shifts? And how fast can birds adapt their internal maps to a changing world? We don't know. There's mystery in timing too. How do birds synchronize their departure, not just across miles, but across entire continents? In a single week each year, millions of birds across North America lift into the sky, as if answering the same invisible call. Warblers, tanagers, vireos, nightjars, thrushes, all going, together. What begins this exodus? Yes, we know about photoperiod and hormone changes, but what causes the precision, the alignment? One theory is that birds respond not just to their own internal clocks, but to a shared environmental rhythm, a pulse in the atmosphere, tied perhaps to temperature, barometric pressure, even distant seismic shifts or lunar phases. Maybe migration isn't a solo act, but a chorus, with birds listening to the same hidden metronome, one we can't yet hear. Then there are birds that break all the rules. Some non-migratory species have suddenly been observed traveling vast distances. Some migratory species stop migrating for years, then begin again. Others split in half. One population migrates, the other stays put. The European robin, for instance, migrates in Scandinavia, but not in Britain. Same species, different behavior. Why? The answer likely lies in a mix of genetics, learning, and environmental cues, but the exact mechanisms remain hidden. In other words, birds don't always do what we expect. And that's part of what makes them so endlessly fascinating. Even the question of how birds sleep while migrating isn't fully resolved. We know that some birds, like the great frigate bird, can fly for days over the ocean. But when do they rest? Studies suggest they sleep in short bursts, only a few seconds long, with one half of the brain shutting down at a time. Unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, it's called. But this doesn't explain how they maintain direction, stay aloft, and avoid fatigue on long flights. Do they dream in motion? Do they rest cognitively without fully disengaging? We're only beginning to understand this. And finally, there's the mystery of how birds find the same tree. Year after year, some species return not just to the same region, not just to the same forest, but to the exact branch, the same patch of reeds, the same rooftop corner. How? They may use landmarks, smells, geomagnetic coordinates, but the precision suggests a level of spatial memory that rivals anything we see in other animals. It's as if their minds hold maps carved in feeling, a kind of emotional geography that pulls them not toward coordinates, but toward familiarity, like returning to a childhood street and knowing, instantly, which way the wind used to blow. And so, as you lie there now, body warm, breath slow, thoughts floating like soft feathers, you can rest in this, that even the most studied of creatures still carry secrets, that even the most ancient of patterns still whisper mysteries, and that even in a world of data and maps and tracking devices, some things are meant to be felt, not solved. Maybe that's the most beautiful part, that birds, in all their brilliance and precision, still leave space for wonder, that the sky remains not just a route, but a question. And maybe that's true for you too. Maybe not everything needs to be known right now. Maybe the journey is allowed to include mystery. Maybe not knowing, yet moving forward, is enough. Let that thought carry you now, through this quiet night, through the silence between heartbeats, through dreams that don't need answers to be meaningful, because the stars are still turning, the winds are still shifting, and somewhere, far above, a bird is following a path it cannot explain and arriving exactly where it needs to be. At last, the wind softens. The sky lightens, just slightly, like the hush before morning. After days, or weeks, of motion, the bird begins to descend. It has crossed mountains, rivers, forests, and oceans. It has followed starlight and magnetic lines, chased warmth and fled from cold. And now, the journey ends. But not with a fanfare, not with applause, only with stillness. The bird lands on a branch it remembers, though it's never seen it before. A branch that feels right. A place that smells like home, or hope, or safety. And just like that, the season shifts. This is the quiet conclusion of migration. Arrival. But in truth, arrival is never just the end of travel. It is the beginning of something else. Something just as vital. Because birds do not migrate to move. They migrate to survive. To rest. To eat. To nest. To begin again. So where do they go? That answer is as varied as the birds themselves. Some, like the barn swallow, travel from the barns and fields of Europe to the open skies of South Africa. Others, like the blackpoll warbler, cross from the forests of Canada to the northern reaches of South America, flying over 3,000 kilometers of open ocean in a single stretch. But wherever they go for a reason. Usually 2 reasons: food and shelter. In the north, winter is lean, insects disappear, rivers freeze, trees grow bare. So birds chase abundance. They follow the insects, the berries, the seeds. They seek places where nectar still drips, where grasshoppers still buzz, where fruit still swells under the sundae. The tropics for many become a haven. Lush canopies, constant warmth, a buffet of life. But even in the tropics, not every bird stays in one place. Some move within the region, shifting slightly with rainfall or temperature. They become nomadic, following not a fixed map, but the rhythm of feast and famine. And then there are the homes. Not just warm places, but familiar ones. Many birds return year after year to the same exact site. A patch of reeds in the same marsh. A hidden hollow in the same cliff face. A rooftop corner on the same street, under the same crooked chimney. They don't just remember, they return. Why? It's not just comfort, it's strategy. Returning to a known place means the bird already understands its risks and resources. It knows where the predators lurk. It knows when the insects hatch. It knows the best spot to build a nest that stays shaded at noon. In other words, experience matters. The more years a bird survives, the better it becomes at selecting the right location. And that knowledge, passed through behavior or instinct, keeps the cycle alive. For some species, arrival means more than survival. It means reunion. Sandhill cranes, for example, return to traditional nesting grounds in pairs that may have been separated during the winter. They reunite with fluting calls and elegant dances, spinning, bowing, leaping in slow rhythm. For albatrosses, some of the most faithful partners in the animal world, migration ends in a ceremony of courtship. They return to the same nesting island after years apart, reuniting with a specific mate through synchronized movements and gentle clicks of the beak. For others, like the Arctic tern, the return is more solitary, but no less profound. After traveling from pole to pole, the bird arrives to nest on a patch of tundra it first saw as a chick. A full circle. And that really is what migration is. Not just a straight line from A to B, but a circle, a rhythm, a breathing in and out of the planet. Why do birds return at all? Why not stay in the warmer, easier place? Because seasons turn, and because home is not always where it is warmest. Sometimes, home is where the young can thrive. The far northern regions, though cold much of the year, offer a short window of abundance, a burst of insects, long daylight hours, fewer predators, the perfect cradle for raising chicks. So the birds return to breed. They endure the journey not for themselves, but for the next generation. And here lies something beautiful, that birds undertake these vast, dangerous migrations not just to live, but to continue life, to find a mate, to build a nest, to protect an egg, to feed a beak that isn't theirs. They return because something calls them back, something that is more than instinct, something deeper than direction. It is the same thing, perhaps, that makes you return to certain memories. A childhood path, a smell, a song you hum without knowing why. Migration is not just travel. It is longing made into motion. It is fidelity to a place that once held your heartbeat. It is a belief that where you began still matters. And even when birds change course, when a population chooses a new wintering ground or shifts its route with the weather, their return is always toward continuity. They don't seek the exact same tree. They seek the same function: shelter, safety, fertility, familiarity, a reason to stay for a little while before the sky calls again. And the sky always calls. So as you rest now, body still and thoughts slow, remember, every great journey ends not with a destination, but with a pause, a season, a moment, a breath, before it begins again. Like the birds, you may have traveled far, across choices and chapters, through memory and meaning. But now, you are here. You have arrived. And even if you don't stay here forever, even if the winds shift and your next path is already waiting, this rest, this place, this moment is yours. So let yourself land. Let yourself be still. Because the journey ends, only so it can begin again. You may not see them. You may not hear them. But when the birds move, the world moves with them. Migration isn't just a journey taken by individual birds. It's a planetary event, a quiet, feathered tide that flows across continents, touching rivers and rainforests, mountains and meadows, farms and cities, skies and oceans. Each wing beat stirs something. Each arrival changes the rhythm of a place. Birds do not travel alone. They carry with them seeds, spores, stories, and when they return, they leave more than footprints in the mud. They leave echoes. Let's begin with something as small as a berry. When a bird eats the fruit of a bush in the north and flies south, it carries the seeds inside its belly. Days later, in a faraway land, those seeds are dropped, scattered into new soil, ready to root and grow. This is called ornithockery, seed dispersal by birds. It is how many plants, especially those with fleshy, colorful fruit, expand their range, survive climate shifts, and colonize new areas. Without birds, entire forests would grow more slowly, less widely, less resiliently. And this happens on a vast scale. Millions of seeds, carried silently on wings, woven into migration's path. But seeds are only the beginning. Birds shape the balance of ecosystems. When they arrive in new places, they eat insects, fish, small mammals, nectar. In doing so, they help regulate populations. A sudden influx of warblers might reduce a surge in mosquito larvae. A flock of gulls might clear a coastline of crabs. They are part of nature's housekeeping, tidying, pruning, correcting. And when they leave, the system shifts again. Predators may decline. Plants may produce more fruit. Cycles adjust. Migration is not just motion. It is pulse. The coming and going of birds is like the heartbeat of an ecosystem. Each arrival a contraction, each departure a release. Even the weather listens. When billions of birds lift into the sky, especially during major migration nights, they change the mass of air in motion. Their wing beats stir thermals. Their bodies absorb and release heat. And when they rise in thick, spiraling columns, like some raptors and storks do, they become like moving clouds, pulling and pushing the wind around them. Radar picks this up. In fact, meteorologists often see waves of birds as blurs on weather maps, lifting all at once like a living storm. We call this aerofauna, animals in the air. It's not just poetry. It's science. And yet, it feels poetic, doesn't it? That the sky isn't empty, but alive, full of invisible migration waves echoing through the atmosphere. And then there is us, humans. We too are touched by migration, whether we know it or not. In the spring, we wake to birdsong that wasn't there the week before. In autumn, we see the skies filled with V-shaped formations, moving south like memories. But the connection goes deeper. For many cultures, bird migration is not just biology, it is meaning. The return of the swallow marked spring for the ancient Greeks. The flight of cranes is celebrated in East Asia as a symbol of longevity and grace. The seasonal arrival of hummingbirds in the Americas is still seen as a spiritual sign by indigenous peoples, an arrival of ancestors, of hope. For centuries, sailors used the movements of seabirds to find land. Farmers watched the skies for migrating geese to know when to plant. Even today, entire economies depend on migratory birds through ecotourism, birdwatching, and the ecological services they provide, from pollination to pest control. Birds connect landscapes. They connect economies. They connect people. And sometimes they teach us about ourselves. Migration reminds us that movement is not disorder. That leaving is not forgetting. That return does not always mean retreat. Birds leave because the season demands it. They return because the land welcomes them back. They shift, adapt, survive, not with panic, but with grace. And in a world that often feels turbulent, their rhythm offers comfort. A promise that change can be natural. That departure can be beautiful. That home can be found again and again. But migration also warns us. Because when migration falters, the world notices. Deforestation, light pollution, urban sprawl, and climate change all threaten the delicate roots birds depend on. A single lost wetland can cause an entire population to collapse. A change in temperature can desynchronize hatching cycles and food availability. And when birds don't arrive where they're expected, ecosystems unravel. Fruits go uneaten. Insects explode in number. Pollination slows. Life falls out of step. That is the fragility of this airborne thread. It is ancient, but not indestructible. It is quiet, but not invisible. It is natural, but now more than ever, it needs protection. Still, hope remains. Because birds are not just messengers of warning, they are symbols of resilience. Some species have begun to change their routes. Others have returned to lands once lost to them. Communities are planting bird-friendly gardens, darkening city lights during migration nights, restoring habitats where flocks can rest. You don't have to be a scientist to help. You just have to pay attention to the sound of wings overhead, to the silence when they don't return, and maybe to your own rhythm, to how you move through seasons, how you arrive and depart, how you affect the world simply by being in motion. So, as you lie still now, listening to the hush that surrounds you, know this. Migration is not just a bird's story. It is ours too. It is a song of movement, of timing, of invisible strings connecting faraway places. It is a story of leaving and returning, of knowing where to go and why to come back. And like all the best stories, its echoes linger long after the wings have passed. Let them settle softly in your thoughts now, like feathers falling, like distant songs, like air rearranged. At some point, the sky grows quiet again. The great flocks have passed. The air no longer shivers with wings. Fields that once echoed with calls and chirps now stand hushed, wrapped in the stillness of after. The birds have arrived. The journey for now is done. And yet, not really. Because migration never truly ends. It only rests. Each journey leaves behind traces. Not footprints, those vanish in the wind, but echoes, memory. The imprint of wing against sky. In the reeds, there's a feather. On a power line, the empty outline of a nest. In the hush of early morning, the silence where a song used to be. You may not notice these things right away, but they're there, reminders that something passed through, something wild, something purposeful, something that knew the shape of the world without needing to be told. And, in a few months, it will begin again. The days will grow longer, the wind will shift. Something will stir in a hidden part of the world where warmth is returning, and far away, a bird will lift into the air once more. Perhaps the same bird that left months ago, perhaps its offspring, perhaps a new traveller, born from the rhythm of those who came before. Migration is not a single event. It is a cycle, a looping breath drawn across the earth, an ancient memory that pulses with the seasons. It returns, because returning is part of living. And even when the birds are gone from view, they linger in our world. In the flowers they pollinated, in the trees they seeded, in the insects they thinned, in the air they stirred with their passage. Even in our stories, myths, songs, lullabies, birds remain. The phoenix rising, the dove returning, the crane dancing, the swallow delivering spring. We look to them, always, when we seek direction, when we long to go home, when we wonder what it means to leave and still belong. You too have migrated, not by wing perhaps, but through days and years, through choices and changes, through letting go, through coming back. Some seasons have asked you to stay, others have pushed you to go, and maybe now, tonight, is a season of rest, a gentle landing, and if so, let it be a soft one. Let this moment be like the edge of a cloud, cool, quiet, slow. Let your thoughts drift, like feathers. Let the weight of the day fall away like old leaves. Because here, in this hush, you are not flying, you are not searching, you are simply held. The sky will call again. It always does. There will be more winds, more stars, more routes to follow. But not tonight. Tonight, the journey has brought you home. Not to a place, but to a pause, to the in-between. The breath between exhale and inhale. The quiet between seasons. And here, in this stillness, the birds have one final lesson to offer. That it's okay to be still. That the world will continue spinning. That you don't always need to be in motion to be moving forward. Some things happen quietly. Some journeys continue inside you. So sleep now. Let your mind feather out into darkness. Let your heartbeat follow the rhythm of migration, the slow beat of something ancient and kind. And when morning comes, may you rise light and sure-footed. May you carry what the birds carry, not the burden of direction, but the trust that you'll know the way when the sky changes again. For now, rest. The journey has landed, and you are home. Good night, traveler of quiet skies. May your dreams be light, your wings unburdened, and your heart always in flight, even when your eyes are closed.